The man you see here was born with no higher level brain functions.
What if we were to transfer the consciousness of one person into the body of this man? Hello, Moira.
Everyone talks about Easter eggs in DVDs. We like putting Easter eggs in the body of the movies themselves. We like putting in little hints for people that if they read the comics their whole lives and they're big fans, they might recognize a few things.
Do you actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
There are a number of things in both X-Men 1 and X-Men 2, some very hidden, some a little more obvious, that you can look at that leads you towards the story that we were telling in X-Men 3. If you look at Jean Grey throughout the course of X-Men 1 and 2, you can see that she's never quite comfortable with her power level. You can see that she's always discussing with Cyclops how the professor is trying to help her maintain control of her abilities. We hint that there's always a chance that if that power goes unchecked, something could happen.
My dreams are getting worse. Scott.
There's a shot at the end of X-Men 1 where they're in the Statue of Liberty head when Magneto's machine that's on the torch has just been vanquished. And there's a final flash of the mutating light ray that he'd been sending out towards Ellis Island. It finally dissipates, and there's a close-up of Jean Grey, and you just linger a little second longer on her than we do on anyone else, and you see a reaction from her. But that was put in there purposefully to try and suggest maybe somewhere down the line in another movie we'll be able to look back and pinpoint that moment as something happened to her. Maybe she was affected somehow by that ray. Maybe something within her mutations altered a bit. And she just has this premonition that something might not be right. And as that continues in X-Men 2, and you see her eyes start to light up, and you see the flame effects coming into her eyes, she exerts more and more power throughout that movie than we'd ever seen from her. She's able to hold back Cyclops' beam, which is something that no one has ever been able to do before. So we start escalating her powers in a way that, again, fans of the comics will see as a progression towards Dark Phoenix. There are all sorts of prophecies that are within the X-Men universe, and the end of X-Men 1, the chess match between Xavier and Magneto leads you right into the beginning of Part 2. If you remember, we used that in the trailer of Part 2, is their discussion, what will you do if they come for you in the night and raid the mansion? You know, what will you do when the war is finally upon us?
I feel a great swell of pity for the poor soul who comes to that school looking for trouble.
Xavier and Magneto have a long history together. They were colleagues years and years before X-Men 1. Xavier has a line in X-Men 1 in which he hints at that relationship, that he's known Magneto for a long time, and that Magneto has even helped him in forming the school, in building Cerebro.
He seems to have found some way to shield himself from it.
How would he know how to do that?
Because he helped me build it.
We really play that in X-Men 3. In fact, X-Men 3 begins with a prologue that takes place 20 years in the past, in which you see Magneto and Xavier together recruiting students for the mansion, which I think will be very exciting for fans to see, a slight different twist on the origin of Xavier's school.
We're not going to have to meet every one of them in person. No.
You always sense within the politics of the X-Men universe that things are simmering, that within society and with the dynamic between mutants and humans, Homo sapiens and Homo superior, that there is a war brewing, that there is a conflict much larger than anything we've ever seen before brewing. And we've been building that in 2 films, and we blow it out in this film. And this is the film in which you see a scale of conflict between the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, between the US government and mutants as a whole, between mutants and themselves, frankly, on a scale that we've never seen before. Both emotionally between certain characters in this film, and also globally and on a spectacle scale. It's gigantic.
The war has begun.
This is not just a superhero movie. This is not just a spectacle. This is a movie that's about something.
We live in an age of darkness, a world full of fear, hate, and intolerance. But in every age, there are those who fight against it.
I worry about how democracy survives when one man can move cities with his mind.
As do I.
X-Men is the ultimate storyteller of life in the real world. of the height of prejudice and the height of forgiveness. It's adjusting to being who you are.
I'm sorry, my dear. You're not one of us anymore.
You know, I think that's always been the interesting thing about the X-Men movies. It's always been about subjects that either are very current and active at the moment in our lives, or things that people have dealt with for a long time, being an outsider.
I want to be able to touch people, Logan. A hug. A handshake. A kiss.
Well, the X-Men franchise and the X-Men comic book is really steeped in commentary on racism and classism. And I think most people relate to that on some level. Whether you're a minority or not, everybody can relate to feeling like they're being on the outside, or they're being pushed aside, or they're being discriminated against, or they have to hide something that they don't wish they had to hide. You know, as much as we advance as a society and a culture, it's still there.
Who would want this cure? I mean, what kind of coward would take it just to fit in?
Is it cowardice to save oneself from persecution? Not all of us can fit in so easily. You don't shed on the furniture.
It's really a metaphor for life. You know, everybody is different in their own way, and I think most people are as well, and I think people see themselves. Even though this is a broad comic book fantasy land world, I think sort of the fundamentals of character are very much like people in our society.
It's what we all want.
No. It's what you want.
It strikes at so many chords in our culture today and makes it an enjoyable, thought-provoking adventure that puts emotional legs on an issue that is in our culture today.
When is it acceptable to use our power, and when do we cross that invisible line that turns us into tyrants over our fellow man?
It's the comparison of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And of course, Xavier is Martin Luther King, and he preaches and teaches against the misuse of power. And on the other hand, Magneto is a character that's very similar to Malcolm X, who's a much more radical individual who is willing to fight to destroy this cure because of where he came from. Magneto, as we know, is a character who's a Holocaust survivor.
This cure is voluntary. Nobody's talking about extermination.
No one ever talks about it. They just do it.
Here you have a war going on between three people, three groups, the government, the X-Men, and then the mutants that are really proud of who they are and that are trying to defend something that they feel is really real.
That cure is meant for all of us. If we want freedom, we must fight for it.
And it's just not necessarily one's a good guy and one's a bad guy. It's grey, and I think that's the other great thing about it.
Magneto wants a war. We'll give him one.
Every society has their taboos that they impose upon us, and we always find a way to stand up and fight for personal freedoms, and that's the X-Men.
This suit fit me in X-Men 1.
Doing the costumes in X3 is monumental, and there is a huge responsibility to the first two films. You want to keep the spirit of the first two films, but the script is quite different. It's a grittier script, so to make a new contribution and change it slightly, but still keep it X-Men and in a real world, I think that was the largest challenge. The women, we decided to go a little more sexy, but in general, certain characters we all agreed worked. Even though their clothes may be different, it's the same feeling.
I love what you've done with your hair.
You too.
Well, I think particularly with Storm, the hair was the biggest decision, which we all worked on. The moment we came on the film, everyone decided to give her a more modern haircut to make her tougher but sexier at the same time. We went with a lot of black for her, which she didn't wear in the other films except for her X-suit. So I think that was a pretty conscious decision, the cut of her clothes. Everything was much more fitted than she wore before.
Jean?
Jean Grey, we decided to go with a lot of color, and again, it was issues with her hair. Also, her character is so different in this movie that we had a lot of leeway to change who she was. Dark Phoenix was particularly difficult. We didn't want to go as far as the comics where she's in a catsuit. We were very careful to choose the very dark Phoenix red color. We wanted her to be very sexy, but